Chapter 51. Floor 3 smelled of fire, mildew, and overcooked rotten meat. When all of this was over, Sarah was looking forward to a long, hot shower and maybe an hour of meditation in front of scented candles. But first she had to somehow live through the next 2 hours. She and the rest of the team waited for Gibbons and Perkins. The 2 men finally returned with some supplies stuffed into a bin-top duffel bag. Perkins had made a makeshift sling for the bag and wore it over his shoulder. Gibbons had a slight smile on his face, and it was infectious. "Found some toys?" she asked with a knowing grin. Perkins beamed. "You ask, we find." "You both should have been thieves," Sarah said. Gibbons nodded slightly. "If you can't forage, you can't survive." "So I remember." She gestured to the bag. "What you got for me?" "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," Perkins said. "The kinds of toxic chemicals used for cleaning is terrifying. Also damned useful if you're trying to build bombs." "So we got the goodies?" Perkins and Gibbons exchanged a glance. "I take it," she said. "That's a negative." "We got most everything we need," Perkins said. "But the surgical unit on the next floor probably has what we're looking for." She raised an eyebrow. "Which is what, exactly?" "Oxygen tanks," Gibbons mumbled. "Excuse me," she said. "Did you say oxygen tanks?" The Kentuckian nodded. "We're thinking worst-case scenario." Schneck said. "Puro, too? You trying to blow up the goddamn building?" Perkins laughed. "We're not looking for a big one. Want to get some of those masks. Although," he grinned, "now that you mention it—" "Don't even joke about it," Sarah said. "We're here to save people, not kill everyone." "Yes, boss," Perkins said. "We'll behave." "Unless we can," Gibbons added. She shot Gibbons a withering look. "You boys check your ammo." The 2 men sighed. Perkins carefully took off the duffel bag and placed it on the floor. Then he and Gibbons both scoured their uniforms and belts for an ammo count. They each had 2 full mags left. Gibbons had a quarter mag in his rifle, Perkins a half mag. Perkins had 2 flashbangs. Gibbons was out. "Schneck, go grab Epps' gear. He's not coming with us." "Boss," Schneck said and jogged down the hallway to the observation room. Gibbons raised his brows. "Hands that bad?" She nodded. "He's staying." A flash of anger raced across Gibbons' face and then disappeared as though it had never been there. "Are you going to lose the hands?" "No," Sarah said, "because we're going to get him out of here. We're all going to get out of here, and we have less than 2 hours to do it." Gibbons nodded. "Yes, boss." Schneck reappeared. He carried Epps' rifle and 2 belts. He was smiling. "Good news, boss," he said as he approached. "Epp has 2 full mags and a third that's more than half full. He's also got an M84 and a flare, plus some light sticks." "Good news?" she sighed inwardly. It was good news, but not nearly what she'd hoped for. Lack of discipline. She hadn't kept her team in line when it came to fire control. Hell, she hadn't kept herself in control either. But who the hell was worried about conserving ammo when you were fighting a goddamned oil monster? "Good. Spread the wealth, men. I want everyone with at least 1 full mag, 2 if we can help it. Load up any spares with as much as you can." "Sure wish we had O'Malley's gear," Schneck said. Sarah didn't bother glaring at him. Grousing wasn't allowed on the SWAT team, but she couldn't help agreeing with Schneck. She wasn't sure any of O'Malley's gear had survived the monster attack, but it was something they should have checked. The man was dead, but his ammo, grenades, supplies, anything could have helped them right now. And all of that was down on floor 2 in a smoldering wreck of a room. "I'm failing as a leader tonight," she thought. It was her job to think of those kinds of things. Not paying attention to those details could make the difference between bringing home live soldiers and writing letters to grieving families. "Do better," she told herself. The final ammo count wasn't all that good. Thankfully, Epps' supplies added some cushion. Everyone was loaded up with 2 full mags, except for Kilfoyle and Schneck. The 2 members each had a full mag and a nearly empty mag to boot. Celianne made sure Kilfoyle and Schneck had extra magazines for their Glock sidearms and put them in charge of carrying Perkins and Given's supply booty. She was loath to let any one team member carry all the grenades, so she spread them around as well. She kept having to remind herself that the bullets didn't matter all that much. The creatures were immune to them, save for the damage done to their appendages. They could fire at the eye stalks and maybe snap a few tentacles, but those efforts were futile if they couldn't kill the beasties. Bullets might be fine for a human threat, but for these goddamn things, they'd have to use flame, and a lot of it. But that was another problem. Before the huge creature came smashing through the wall and attacked the smaller one, she'd noticed something. The smaller creature had skin, or a shell, something like that. It was lighter than the creature's normal black. Not by much, but a little brighter, and it didn't seem to absorb as much light. Whenever they shot one of the appendages, black dust or crumbs seemed to float in the air, and those growths were solid. Or maybe hollow was the right word. When the tentacles or eye stalks broke off, liquid oozed out and hardened to replace the broken portions. Liquid to solid. But the big one went back to liquid to swallow or absorb or consume the smaller one. The idea of a liquid entity large enough to fill a swimming pool was terrifying. Is that what they faced? Something that grew and grew and grew until there was nothing left for it to eat? If so, they were truly screwed. And Floor 6 had gone dark. How many patients? How many staff? How many human beings had it already consumed? And the most important question, was it on the move? Or sitting up there lying in wait for another meal? And if it was... "Boss?" Givens said. Sarah snapped out of her thoughts. She could think later. Right now, they had to move. "Form up, 2 teams. Kilfoyle and Schneck are with me. Alpha will lead." Givens grinned. "What's your problem?" she asked. He laughed. "Seems like old times, boss." Perkins punched his partner in the arm. "And how's that a good thing?" Givens' face contorted with mock pain, his lips curling back to show his dingy teeth. "Ouch!" He glared at Perkins. "You hit like an Air Force man." Rolling his eyes, Perkins turned and walked to the stairwell, Givens in tow. Sarah took a deep breath. "You guys ready?" The remaining members of her team nodded. "Then let's go." As before, the stairway was empty. Unlike before, metallic banging echoed off the concrete walls. Givens and Perkins looked back at Celianne before continuing to the landing. She gave them a curt nod, and the 2 men stepped quickly up the remainder. The landing wasn't large enough for the entire team. Schneck and Kilfoyle walked past the landing and took position a few steps up the next stairway. Sarah stood 3 steps below the landing, her rifle pointed at the top step. Through the glass window set in the door's top third, they could see a man's face blocking out most of the light. A strange grimace of both excitement and surprise appeared on his face. The banging on the door stopped, and the man stepped back. Givens faced the door, and Perkins held its handle. When Sarah gave the signal, Perkins opened the door. The man standing before them was dressed in blue jeans and a fleece, flabby belly easily visible despite the baggy garment. "Thank God," the man said. He stood a few meters back from the door. "Goddamn elevators aren't working, and neither is the—" His eyes seemed to finally take in their appearance and what they carried. He raised his hands in the air. "What the hell is going on?" he asked in a high-pitched voice. Sarah felt bad for the guy. He probably thought they were just hospital security, given the dim lights in the stairwell, but his eyes had found the rifles, the uniforms, and the dangerous expressions the team wore. "Sir, you can drop your hands. We're Houston SWAT." He slowly lowered his hands but kept his eyes fixed on Givens' weapon. "What are you doing here? Is there a terrorist attack? Is that why we can't leave?" "Terrorist attack," she said to herself. If only it was that simple. "Sir, calm down, please." "I mean, what the fuck is going on? I just want to go home. I have—" "The lieutenant told you to be quiet," Givens said with a scowl. Sarah tapped him on the shoulder, and he moved out of her way. She stepped across the threshold and into the brightly lit hallway, Rifle still in her hands, she pointed it at the floor and then let it drop on the sling. "Just calm down, sir. What's your name?" "Mike," the man stammered. He dropped his hands to just above his waist, eyes still locked on her weapon, although it was pointed at the floor. She tried to smile. With all the dust and dirt caked on her face, she wasn't sure it looked like anything more than a hole with white teeth. "Mike," she said, "there is a situation. We are taking care of it." The man's eyebrows raised. "Situation? Ma'am? The goddamn fire alarm went off for a few seconds. The elevators are offline, no one's cell phone works, and the hospital telephones are dead." Cell phone's not working. Shit, she thought. They're jamming all communications. "It's the storm," she replied. "Whole city's having problems." "Then," he swallowed, "if not because of the fire alarms, what are y'all doing here?" "We're here to check the floor. We're going level by level through the building, making sure there are no problems." The words felt awkward and ridiculous as they passed her lips. Mike's borderline angry face dissolved into an easy grin. "Well, hell, why didn't you say so? But why can't we go downstairs?" Her train of thought departed like a fall leaf. She opened her mouth to reply and then stopped. "Rules," Givens said. "Have to treat this like a real emergency. Y'all need to stay put," he drawled. Mike shook his head in disgust. "You have any idea what goddamn time it is?" "We do, sir," Sarah said. "And you're preaching to the choir. We'd rather not be here either." Mike considered that for a moment. "Okay, fine," he said. "But I want out of here. Like soon." "Don't we all?" Schneck muttered from the threshold. Sarah painted a smile on her face. "Mike, if you'll just be patient, we'll get you out of here." "So what the hell am I supposed to do until then?" "There's a lounge up here, right? So go lounge," Perkins said. Mike narrowed his eyes and glared at Perkins. Then his eyes softened and widened. "Yeah, I think I'll do that." The man backed away from them and walked quickly down the hall. Confused, Sarah turned and looked at Perkins. His rifle was no longer pointed at the floor, but at the wall where Mike had previously stood. She giggled. "That's mean." "Did the job," Perkins said with a grin. "Okay," she said. "Supplies. Alpha, go find what you need. Tell anyone you see that we're sweeping the floor. Give them the same bullshit we just fed that guy, and make sure that damn door is locked behind you." "Boss," Givens and Perkins said. They checked the door and moved down the hall. She turned to Schneck and Kilfoyle. "Let's make the rounds." The two men nodded at her and followed her down the hallway. They managed to walk halfway around the building. Sarah couldn't stop herself from looking out any windows they came across. Flashing red, blue, and white lights pierced the rain-drenched early morning darkness. They had enough cops and military out there to handle several riots. Patients, nurses, doctors, and other staff had no doubt seen what she had. She was surprised there wasn't more people waiting for them in the hallways trying to get out. Sarah's team eventually stumbled across concerned staff. A few words, a few lies, and they seemed happy enough to go back to work, although she wasn't sure any of them believed her. Fortunately, hospital staff had jobs to do, and since at least one surgery was taking place, they were more than a little busy. If this had all happened during the day, they'd no doubt have found a horde of people in the lounge. Since it was night and way past visiting hours, Mike was an anomaly rather than the rule. When she and her team headed back to the stairwell they'd entered from, Sarah smiled. Team Alpha stood in the hallway. The two men had scrounged yet another duffel bag of supplies. Kilfoyle groaned. "Great, more shit to carry." "Shut it," Sarah said. Perkins grinned and held up the open bag. Several small oxygen masks, still attached to their feed canisters, peeked out. "I think we might be ready." "Anyone think to get more fire?" she asked. Givens reached into his pocket and brought out 3 plastic disposable lighters. "I did, boss." She grinned. "That's my boys. Okay, form up. Kilfoyle, you got bag duty." "Right," he said without complaint. "Let's go." Schneck opened the stairwell door and the teams headed inside. Another set of stairs. They moved up them easily. Sarah was tired, but more from the exertion of fighting and fleeing the oil monsters than physical labor, although running and fighting for your life was definitely a good workout. When they reached the 5th-floor landing, Sarah's skin prickled with gooseflesh. The window inset at the fire door was dark as pitch. "Givens, flash your rifle light at the window." The Kentuckian pressed a button on his rifle and a stream of LED white light flashed out. He pointed the rifle at the target. The light shined through the glass and illuminated a wall. "Shouldn't the lights be on?" Schneck asked. She nodded and clicked her mic. "Moore, we're at floor 5. What's the status?" "There doesn't seem to be any power on the floor. Spotters can see emergency lights in some areas, but most of floor 5 is in the dark. Over." "Any heat signatures?" "None," the tinny voice replied. "Any reason for us to go in there?" Pause. "I'd rather you get to floor 6 as soon as possible." "Roger," Sarah said. "We'll head there now. See Leanne out." She killed the mic and then looked at her men. "You heard the lady. Up." As the rest of the team went up the steps, she lingered by the door. She couldn't help turning on her own light and staring through the window. All she saw was an off-white wall, although it looked as though some kind of design had been painted or etched into its surface. It was impossible to tell what the design was or was meant to be, but it gave her chills just the same. She finally pulled herself away and climbed the steps 2 at a time. The team was waiting for her, Givens and Perkins taking up door duty once again. "Everything okay, boss?" Kilfoyle asked and readjusted the bag on his shoulder. "Nothing to worry about," she said. "We ready?" Kilfoyle pulled his sidearm from his holster and held it in his right hand, the bag in his left. "I am." "Lights on, men," she said. White light erupted from the embedded LEDs on the weapons. "Let's do this."